Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Leaving the 9 to 5 podcast brought to you by the Lifting Love Podcast Network. I'm your host, Lenny, and alongside me, as always, is my co host and friend, DJ. The DJ, what's going on, man?
What's going on today, Lenny?
Not much, man. Got a guest episode. Hold on now. Hold on. Before we get to that, before we get started, we'd like to thank our sponsor for today, TechLight Associates Incorporated. Leaving the 9 to 5 is proudly presented by TechLight Associates. Call TechLight for all your technology, wireless, or audiovisual needs. Whether you're in New York, North Carolina, or anywhere in the United States, TechLight has got you covered, even offering financing options for your next big project. So give TechLight a call or visit them online at www.techlightassociates.com. Now let's get on with the episode. All right. Big guest today. Big guest today. Are you ready? You better have those air horns ready for us. Okay. Our next guest is the co-founder and co-owner of Professional Care Physical Therapy and ProCare Occupational Therapy. From working as a physical therapist to put himself through school to now running his own company. His company currently has 3 offices and over 90 employees. He currently works with athletes from some of the biggest sport organizations in the world. Our guest is the true definition of turning your passions into a business, into a career. We are excited to introduce him. Please help us welcome Dr. George Ciresi.
There he is. Good morning.
Well, thank you. Good morning, guys. Thank you for having me today. I appreciate it.
So, let's jump right into it, man. Who are you?
Oh, who am I? That's a great question. How much time do we have?
I've gotten to know him a little bit.
Yeah. My name is George Ciresi. I grew up here in East Patchogue, New York, out on Long Island. Like you said, I went to PT school. I was fortunate enough to be able to graduate and open up an office in my hometown of East Patchogue. And then that was about 14 years ago. And little by little, we kept growing. We're at the point now where we have, like you said, 3 locations. We have a physical therapy practice, an occupational therapy practice, and then a athletic performance business. And we have about 90 employees right now. So we're just been very fortunate to be able to continue to grow and provide good quality physical and occupational therapy services to the community.
So what got you into this? I know I read that you played sports. So, baseball is Sacred Heart. So what was it, just a love for sports, and what got you into physical therapy and occupational therapy?
Well, if you want the real honest answer, I'll give it to you. And it was my mom. Wow. It was as simple as that. I had a dream I thought I was going to be playing professional baseball, and it was just a dream. There was absolutely no chance I could ever be playing professional baseball, but why do you say that? College. Why
do you say there's no shot?
Yeah, just looking back at it now, it was a long shot. Maybe let's put it that way. But I think I was in maybe 10th or 11th grade, and my mom came to me and said, we got to start thinking about colleges. And I said, all right, that sounds good. And she said, if this baseball thing doesn't work out, what are we going to do as a second choice? And I was like, I have no idea. And she literally just said, I think physical therapy might be a good option for you. You like working with people, you're into sports, that might be a good option. So I volunteered at a place one summer I liked, and I'm like, yeah, this is a good second option. So when we started looking at schools, we looked at schools that had physical therapy programs and baseball. And I ended up choosing Sacred Heart University in Fairfield, Connecticut, that had a D1 baseball team. And I played baseball there, and then realized I wasn't going to be playing for the Yankees. So it was a good thing I listened to my mom and had the physical therapy as a background.
He's a diehard Yankees fan, by the way. I've seen his office. It's everywhere.
Oh, man. I'm so sorry.
I actually had the pleasure, believe it or not, when I was a student, I was down in Birmingham, Alabama, training under a world-renowned orthopedic surgeon named James Andrews, Dr. Andrews. And I actually had Dr. Andrews had Derek Jeter as a patient. So I was able to actually put ice on Derek Jeter's shoulder. That was my claim to fame.
That's fire right there.
Bro, that's so awesome. So I grew up a big baseball fan. I'm a Mets fan, but it's all right. I still love the Yankees. I got a lot of respect for them. 27 World Championships. But what was that moment like? Was that sort of a moment that you realized, hey, this is something I really, really know is going to work? When was that moment for you? Working with these crazy athletes that you see on TV, and we look at them sometimes as movie stars. When was that moment for you?
Yeah, it was surreal. It was down there, down in Birmingham, I would say about 50% of the patients were professional athletes. There were a ton of NFL guys down there, a lot of baseball guys. And I was a student, so my clinical instructor, he was like the number two guy in command. He got to see a lot of these athletes, so in turn, I got to see a lot of them as well. Um, but yeah, it really was. It was a great, great learning experience. It was a great opportunity. I don't think I didn't realize how significant it was until probably after the fact. Until I got into the real world and said, "Hey, it's not that common that you treat professional athletes every day." Um, but yeah, it was eye opening for sure to see professional athletes. I mean, I remember there was one time there was it was like Derek Jeter, there was Roy Jones Jr., there was I think Charles Barkley was actually in for the day. There were like all these great professional athletes that are under one roof, just hanging out in our area talking. I'm like, this is unbelievable. But it was really a cool
That's so
experience.
crazy. Did you have like a fangirl moment where it's like, or fanboy moment where you're like, oh my goodness, this is so and so.
I would be. I could tell you that. I'd be like, oh my god.
No, I didn't until Jeter came. When Jeter came, then I was like, "Oh man, this is legit." And he was only down there for a day. It was the first day of the season. I think it was 2003, and he was, if you remember, he was sliding to third base and separated his shoulder. And he, at the time, Stu Hershon was the Yankees team surgeon. He saw him, didn't think he needed surgery, but had Dr. Andrews do a second opinion. So there was, all this rumor that Jeter was going to be coming down to Birmingham, and he did. So I did get a little starstruck when I first got to meet him and his dad, and his cousin was actually with them too. But
That's
it
so
was pretty
awesome.
cool.
So, I mean, you said you were born and raised in Long Island. What was that like for you? Kind of take us through, if you can, like your high school journey, just like leading up to college and getting to Sacred Heart and finding out that, hey, this is actually what I'm going to do. Like, what was that journey? So you said you played sports.
Yeah, yeah. So I was baseball was my love. I played baseball. I wrestled, but I always knew I wanted to continue on playing baseball in college. So I graduated from Patchogue Medford High School, went on to Sacred Heart University, did my undergraduate there, played baseball, and then got into the
Nice.
PT program. Back then, it was what was called like a 3+3 program. I did my undergraduate the first 3 years, and then the fourth year I started my master's program. So instead of having it be a 7-year program, it ended up shortening to a
Nice.
6-year program. Um, and while I was in PT school, the last year of PT school is actually all your clinical rotations. So I did one at St. Charles Hospital on Long Island, did one down in Birmingham, and I also did one at
Nice.
LIJ out west. Now it's called Northwell. But yeah, it was really a long time looking back at it. I graduated in 2003, and at that time they didn't have a
Mhm.
doctorate level program, so it was probably I got to work right around 2 weeks after I graduated, started working for a practice, and always knew I wanted to own my own practice, but learned a lot in that time period. Those few years working for somebody else, was fortunate enough to become a director, promoted to be a director of a practice in Great Neck. Learned a lot there, made a lot of mistakes. I was very fortunate for that experience. And then, my partner and I looked for a PT practice, a location to open up, and we looked everywhere from Mauritius to Queens. And we just so happened to find Patchogue as a place that really needed good quality therapy. It wasn't my first choice, but after I looked at it, I'm like, hey, you know what, this might work. I'm from this town. I know a lot of people. I'm still active in the community. I think it might be a good fit. There wasn't one dominating physical therapy practice at the time in Patchogue, and we rolled the dice and pretty much saved every last dollar I had to be able to open it up, and I'm really happy
So
I
you
did.
started working as a physical therapist for someone else. What's that? What's it like to, like, looking back on it, working for someone else as a physical therapist or the director, like you said, in Great Neck? What's it like working for someone else and then being able to, now you run 3 offices, have over 90 employees? What's it like looking at that now?
Yeah, I wouldn't change a thing. And I go back and I speak to the graduating class at Sacred Heart University every year. We do these mock interviews, and a lot of them have dreams and aspirations of owning their own practice. But I really think it's valuable to stop and actually work for somebody else first. You learn in PT school how to be a physical therapist, but you don't learn the business side of things. And I think it's important in the beginning to really just hone in hone in on your skills of being a physical therapist and not having to worry about the business, and then kind of take small steps forward. So with me, I was a staff therapist, then a director, and then eventually became a business owner. But I think, like I mentioned, there were a lot of things that I learned and a lot of mistakes that I made. That's a lot easier when you're a part of a team and the team is not necessarily owned by you. If you make the mistake, it doesn't hit your pocket as much as as the team that you work for.
What's the biggest mistake that you've made as far as or biggest teaching moment on that journey to I know I'm going to own my own practice one day?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I look back and I think there's a lot that I learned. I think, I was just having a conversation with somebody the other day. If I felt like we had a really good product when we opened up, it was just myself, my partner, Jim. We had a front desk person and an aide who they all still work with us, which I'm
That's
really
awesome.
proud of. Yeah, that's one of the things I really, like I said, take pride in is, we have 26 physical therapists and occupational therapists, and we very rarely lose anyone. I feel like we create a good environment for them to work in, and hopefully compensated well and treated well, and we don't really lose many. The ones that we have lost usually are ones that go on to open up their own practice. But to answer your question, I think what I learned after we got established and we had that good product, getting out there and marketing is very important. We didn't bring on a marketing director until probably 8 or 9 years into the business, and if we would have done that at an earlier time, I think we probably could have grown a little bit quicker. But I think honing in on your skills, having a good product, having a great patient experience is important, and then letting people know about that. And that's one thing that we didn't do that well in the beginning.
Yeah. So you actually encourage people to work for someone else first.
I would. I know that I have friends that went right out of college and opened up their own practice and did well. But I just my personality, I think it's good to be able to learn first, really take your time, think things through, see what works, what doesn't work. There's a lot of things from that first job that I still utilize today. There's some things I say, hey, I probably wouldn't do that if I owned my own practice. But I think having that perspective is good for sure.
Now, would you go back and change anything?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think making mistakes is a good thing. It really, the way I learned the best from mistakes. I'm sure I would tweak a little things here and there, but no, I enjoyed the journey, and I'm still looking forward to the next chapter. So I wouldn't change anything.
DJ, what you got?
I mean, what keeps you motivated? I see you drinking some tea, so that will digress us into snack of the week. Quick.
Oh, I keep forgetting to do snack of the week again. It's so bad.
There you go.
All right.
So George's been sipping his tea all morning. What kind you got today?
This is actually just a green tea. I'm not a big caffeine person. I don't really drink coffee. I don't drink much tea. But before we got on, I was telling DJ and Lenny just going over a little bit of a cold. So the tea is nice. It soothes my throat.
That's good. That's great. I love it. I love tea.
What you got, DJ?
I'm going back. I'm taking a step back. I'm going better nut bar today again.
Oh.
I'm a Sam's Club snack of the week person. So
yeah, Sam's Club snack of the week. You want to take a bite? Come on now.
Oh, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it.
Come on.
There you go.
All right, I got.
What do you got?
I got Lance Captain Wafers. It's a cream cheese and chive. I don't know if you can see that right there. They're pretty good, man. I'm telling you, they're pretty fire.
That's great. So George, what would you say, so building your team over the years, culture is a huge aspect. How would you say you and your partner went about framing that culture and maintaining that? Because as the team grew from a couple people to now, I've been to your offices and you got a big team. How do you maintain that culture and have built that culture? I'm sure there's mutual self-respect, professionalism, between everything. I know it doesn't just happen, but there's some curation to it.
Yeah, definitely. When we first opened, we had a mission statement. We had our core values. We had all that stuff kind of written on paper, but it wasn't necessarily always communicated to the team. And as we brought more people on, it definitely wasn't communicated. But I think we led by example. My partner Jim and I, the reason why our company is called Professional Care is because we want to be professional and we
Man,
care.
that's good.
We were kind of,
I didn't even think. I'm sorry, because I didn't even
Quote
think
of the
about
week right
that.
there. Professional
I,
and we care. Boom.
I didn't even think about that.
yeah.
Wow. Sorry.
They got it.
Most people don't, but yeah, that's kind of the genesis of it. But yeah, we were kind of in the trenches, treating patients. We're really all about the patient experience, and we want the patient to, have an experience unparalleled to any other, healthcare professional office that they've been in. But yeah, we really just led by example. It wasn't until more recently that we actually got back into the habit of reestablishing what our core values are and developing that culture and kind of communicating it. But to answer your question, was really we just led by example. Everything we do, it's is this going to benefit the patient? Is this going to help with the patient experience? Is this going to help with outcomes? Hard work ethic, professionalism, patient experience, excellence in physical therapy. All these things were kind of demonstrated by us on a daily basis. It didn't necessarily have to be communicated, but now we've learned it's probably better as we onboard them to let them know, hey, these are our core values. And even in our interview process, we let them know that this is kind of what we're looking for. And, if people don't agree, that's okay. It doesn't make them, a good or a bad person. It just might not be, a good system for them to be in. If you're not about professionalism and hard work and excellence and always putting the patient's needs first, then that's fine. But, that's probably not, this isn't the
Did
best
you
environment
take
for you.
bits and pieces from working for someone else and all the other positions you had before actually owning your business to create and cultivate that culture and that environment that you have now with your team?
I think so. I think we took some of this stuff, but I think inherently it's just in the person, in the individual. Both my partner and I, both very hard workers. We both really truly care about the product. The goal is that each patient achieves their goals. It's a very patient centric approach. But yeah, there were certain things that we definitely saw, both good and bad, in previous and not even previous jobs in physical therapy. Other jobs that I worked, as in high school or college. But yeah, I think you kind of, as a framework, take little bits and pieces of every experience that you had and say, hey, when I start this, how do I want it to look and what's my vision? And we were lucky enough to
Yeah.
establish that culture.
I think dreams are such, they're overrated and underrated because, as a young business owner, you have all these dreams. And then when you get to a certain point, what are your, seeing your 3 offices, seeing where you've came from, I'm sure you have dreams to keep going, keep that fire going. How else do you see to pursue that? Is it growing the team, more locations, more services? How do you guys kind of approach that?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, in healthcare right now, specifically with physical therapy, we're always kind of battling reimbursement rates. Unfortunately, the insurance companies every year cut back, and we're kind of, threading that needle. We want to keep quality up. We want to keep our staff, compensate them well, and also deliver good quality physical therapy. So it's tough when you got to keep costs keep getting cut, expenses keep rising. So there's 2 options: is continue to grow, and become more efficient. And so that's what we always preach about: is we have to continue to grow and make sure our processes are as efficient as possible. But yeah, I mean, generally speaking, our goal is to always provide high quality physical therapy, and ideally we could just stay exactly where we are and that'll continue to happen. But the reality of healthcare is you have to continue to grow and not stay where you are. Otherwise, it's going to keep shrinking those profit margins and it's going to be hard to operate.
It's going to be like grow or be left behind or kind of thing.
Yeah, it's amazing. If you look into the dynamics right now in the state of physical therapy, there's all these private equity companies coming in, buying up these PT offices. And I understand a lot of my friends sold out to private equity because the profit margins are razor thin and they just can't do it anymore. So they sell to private equity. Or, we're dealing with competition with hospital-based PT practices, some of the big hospital networks that, get paid 3 times what we get paid as a small private practice owner, or the physician-owned practices, the orthopedists that own their own PT. So there's a lot of competition. So really what we have to do is just continue to provide high-quality PT, have a name out there that people recognize and say, yeah, I went there once before, I got good quality care, I'm going to go back to them. 20 years ago, we did all our marketing to doctors. Now we're actually marketing a lot more to the general public, getting involved in the community, doing a lot of community events, and becoming recognizable by people instead of just the physicians that refer to us.
Oh, okay. So you talk about insurance. I don't know how much you can really talk about it. If you can, or if you can't, we can skip it. For people who are either in your field or maybe want to get into something like that, what is that process like for you guys getting paid? Right, it's insurance. You put it through someone's insurance. Like, how does that system work?
Yeah, it's confusing. It really is. It's confusing for the consumer, for the patient. It's confusing, and it's even confusing for the business owners. Yeah, you have, there's a lot of different insurance companies out there. You want to try to become potentially in network with these insurance companies if their fee schedule makes sense. I mean, there's some insurance companies that pay $7 per visit. You can't really be in network if you're only going to be getting paid $7 a visit. Yet there's some places that will take that and say, yeah, I can do volume. I can see 6 patients an hour, and that makes sense for me. So I think it's an individual approach. You have to look at it and say, hey, you know, what are my expenses? What's my cost per visit that I provide? And what's kind of that break even number, and then start making decisions based on that. But it's confusing. It's ever evolving, and it's amazing how there's a bunch of insurance companies that are closed. The network panels are closed. You can't even get in to become in network with them, even if you wanted to,
So
which
it's
is unbelievable.
basically it's either you're
But
in network, which again I'm just trying to break down the terminology. In network means you're like a partner of sorts with the insurance company, and that they'll work with you.
yeah, you're a contracted provider. So if you have XYZ insurance company and you're a patient and you open up the book or go online and say, hey, I'm looking for a physical therapist, you'll see George Ciresi Professional Care Physical Therapy as an
Gotcha,
in-network
gotcha.
provider. Um, there's also, some insurance plans have what's called out-of-network benefits. So you could see an out-of-network provider, and then they'll reimburse the out-of-network provider as well. Not every insurance has that. It's probably, if I'm estimating, maybe 15 or 20% of insurance plans have out-of-network
And
benefits.
and then you
Um,
talk about
but yeah,
and then you talk about that
it's a
fee.
confusing.
The fee would basically be like whatever they can reimburse you, and then the client or the customer pays a copay depending on what the insurance
Yeah, and that's even a very misunderstood from the consumer's point of view too. So, a lot of times patients think like, oh, the co-payment's extra on top of it that the provider is going to get paid. Where actually, if there's a set fee, so let's say, again, I won't use specifics, but insurance XYZ is going to reimburse a physical therapist $60 per visit, and the patient has a $40 copayment. That means that the copayment's $40, and then the insurance is going to pay $20. So the
Oh,
patient is actually paying two-thirds of the fee, which is
That's
amazing.
insane.
And that insurance company that I just mentioned, I've been a PT for 20 years. They've paid $60 per visit back in 2003. In 2023, they're still paying $60 per visit. When I first started, most people didn't have copayments. Maybe they had a $10 copayment or at most a 20. Now you see copayments, 50, 60, $75 copayments. The patient is actually bearing a large percentage of that financial burden, and they don't even realize it.
so, I mean, last thing on insurance, you feel like it? Do you feel, in your personal opinion, as someone who's worked all the ranks and has, I mean, you've been in the field for many years now. Um, do you feel as though insurance companies need to make a change, a different approach, or what do you see need? What do you think needs to happen for things to just be better, not just for you as someone who's getting paid from the insurance companies, but also for your clients and your customers that you're providing care for?
Yeah, we could probably have another whole episode just on this topic.
That's a whole topic, I think, in itself.
It's just generally speaking, insurance premiums. I'm a business owner. Our premiums, the cost that we pay for health insurance for our employees, every year it goes up. The premium goes up by double digits. It's anywhere between 11 and 19%. The premium goes up every year. Yet, if you talk to providers, doctors, physical therapists, their rate that they get paid stays exactly the same or it decreases. So it just, generally speaking, I know there's a lot of variables that go into this. It just doesn't make sense that premiums are increasing every year, patients' co-payments are going up every year, what they're paying the doctors are staying the same, and then you see windfall profits for these companies at the end of the year. Now, with that said, I'm not one of these guys that always say, hey, insurance is bad, that they're the enemy. If there was no such thing as insurance, we'd probably have 10% of the patients that end up coming into the office. It's a good thing that it subsidizes I just feel like it has to be revamped in some way. And I don't have the answer for that.
One day, one day.
Things are tough.
We got an insurance person on here.
Yeah,
One day. Have
yeah.
them explain it.
Yeah.
Yeah. To
That'd be a
get
good
out
talk.
of the insurance talk, you mentioned a partner. And I think this is huge for people because, I mean, I run my business by myself. DJ runs his business by himself. But there are a lot of people who I know personally who run businesses and they have partners, whether it be silent, whether it be like on the day to day. So first off, who's your partner? If you could talk about him, what does he do? Kind of give us a story about how you guys met and all that.
Sure. Yeah. My partner's name is Jim Blair. We met back in that original PT practice where we were both treating. We were both staff therapists at the time. He became promoted to become a clinical director in one location. About a year later, I got promoted to become a clinical director in a new startup location in Great Neck. We both had the same kind of work ethic, hard work, put the patient's need first. And we just kind of came together and said, hey, we're both kind of looking to maybe do something on our own. You think it would make sense? He's a few years older than me. He's about 5 years older than me. He's a hardworking, honest person. My accountant, our accountant always says, he's like, you guys have something very special. You guys really never argue, disagree, fight. And I said, well, that's not totally true. We disagree, but I think we have a mutual respect that we don't let it get to the point where we're fighting or letting it, go down that hole. I think it's, you learn on the way, kind of dividing up responsibilities, who's good at this, who's good at that. But I recommend it. Now, I know I've seen other partnerships not work because maybe somebody's working a little harder than somebody else. They feel like they're getting the short end of the stick. I think if that's the case, I think you just have to be open and have a conversation of what, reasonable expectations and responsibilities and things like that. But yeah, I wouldn't change anything. Having the partner, especially, growing up, I had to kind of save all the money to open up the practice. And then we were able to get an SBA loan, which, really helped out as well. But having a partner helped subsidize the startup costs and made it more realistic. Otherwise, I probably would have had to wait another 5 years before I was able to open up.
So going into the partner talk, what's the pros and cons? Like what are your favorite things about having a partner? And do you think some days it would be easier maybe doing it on your own? Like what are your thoughts on partnership like that?
I think if it's the right partner, I think it's worth it. I think, I always say 1 + 1 is 3 when you have a good partnership. It's nice to have someone to bounce ideas off of. It's nice to have somebody there when things are going tough to kind of just be in that foxhole with you. So I think for me, I like it. But again, I've seen partnerships that just, dissolve immediately because egos get involved and, any other thing that could possibly happen. I think you have to look at the logistics of it. Do you think you're able to handle this on your own, all the responsibilities of having a business? And as you continue to grow, are you able to delegate those responsibilities to staff? And, staff are great, but staff probably typically aren't going to put in the effort or the energy level that an owner is going to have, somebody that has equity in the company. So I think it's definitely a super individualized decision. But for me, it's worked out great. If I had to manage this practice right now by myself, it would be difficult.
So coming from that now, I've only mentioned briefly. I would say like passion in that, like, because obviously everybody has their own reasons for doing the business, whether it's for money, for passion, for providing quality care, things like that. Do you guys feel like you match each other in some respect to each other's energy levels? You coincide, kind of like a yin yang kind of thing. Because I know a lot of it is about, if your partner isn't fully in it with you, it's like a marriage almost. In that respect, you don't fully feel you're in it. Like, why do I want to continue to do this kind of thing?
100%. Yeah. No, for us, it's yin and yang. I mean, I'm a Yankee fan. He's a Met fan. I'm a Giants fan. He's a Cowboys fan. Like, we couldn't be more polar opposites with certain things. There's certain things that he's really good at that I'm not good at, and vice versa. So for us, it was kind of a nice balancing act. And we always say, even sometimes I'm more growth minded and he's a little bit more conservative, and we find the sweet spot in the middle, and that works for us. So in our partnership, it's yin and yang, I think. I've seen other partners though where they're two type A personalities that do real well together, and that works too. But for us, it's kind of, we balance each other out very nicely.
I think a cool thing is that you guys, like, you have the partnership, and then you guys literally started at the same practice. You guys literally built everything from the ground up. What what was it like? What was the feeling like of opening your first office? When did it happen? If you can kind of talk about the beginning days of everything.
Yeah, it was fear. I think that was the biggest thing. I'm very analytical and numbers driven. I remember, 54 visits was what we had to do in a week. We had to see 54 patients to break even. So I had that on my mind. I said, how long is it going to take just to break even? And we had a small little office, and it was funny. Every time the phone rang, which wasn't very often in the beginning, we'd both get excited. We'd be treating a patient, the phone would ring, we'd look over there, and it usually was, oh no, I'm sorry, you have the wrong number. We'd get all disappointed. But if it was a new patient, Sandy, who is our office manager, was our office manager at the time too. She would open up the bottom drawer, and that's where we would have the intakes that you'd have to fill out for the new patient. So if we heard the phone ring and then we heard that bottom drawer open, we'd get excited. We knew we'd have a new patient coming in, and we'd be like, yes. Um, but no, it was definitely goal oriented. We had a number in mind. We were always setting new targets and new goals, and it's fun. It's exciting. It's a challenge. We were lucky that we did get busy pretty quickly. But fear is what kept me up at night. But fear is what also, I think, kept me on point, making sure that, hey, I'm making sure I deliver good quality therapy. I'm making sure that my notes are done on time. I'm making sure I'm getting out there and meeting some new doctors and things
Did
like that.
you ever think it would be three offices and 90 employees later?
No, to be honest, I thought deep down, I thought it was going to be successful, but I didn't think it would get, to this level. So sometimes I pinch myself and and say, am I still dreaming? I'm going to wake up one day, be back in that original office
We
with
don't
the
want
phone not ringing.
that. Now, what could you say to inspire somebody who could be in those shoes of working right now at somebody else's physical therapy office, maybe wanting to start a practice, maybe wanting to pursue their dreams? How could you inspire someone like, hey, do it, like, take the leap, go this, maybe take these steps, just to get them, maybe, an idea to get them going on it.
Yeah, sure. I think the first thing is take a step back and say, is this something you really want? Because, when I was in PT school, pretty much everybody said they wanted to own their own practice. And then, push comes to shove, and then, not that many people end up doing it for a variety of different reasons. Are you really, you said it before, DJ, passionate? Like, I'm passionate about physical therapy. I'm passionate about delivering high quality care. I'm passionate about this business. If that's not you, that's okay, but you have to be passionate about it. You have to be willing to come in early. We started at 7 in the morning. We ended at 9 p.m. We worked Saturdays. Having that work ethic, that drive, is that really you? So I think being honest with yourself and say, hey, am I willing to put in the hard work, take the risk, know that it could fail, look myself in the mirror and hold myself accountable, those sort of things. And if that is the case, then I think, really taking a step back and saying, what do I have to do to achieve those goals? Um, am I at the point where clinically I feel comfortable where I can, go out on my own? I don't have to continue to learn about treating physical therapy type conditions. Um, what am I lacking? Am I lacking in the marketing department? Am I lacking in administrative, processes? And, kind of making a list and then saying, all right, how do I get better at that? Do I have to, you know, hire a consultant? Do I have to try to, have a mentor that I can meet with on a regular basis that helps me? And there's a ton of things. Like the American Physical Therapy Association has a private practice section that has. I just got back from a conference in Austin about 2 weeks ago, and there's a ton of resources out there for startup physical therapists to open up their own practice. You just have to kind of look for it.
Awesome.
I think that speaks a lot. Now, this might be a little, probably like a step 2, maybe a 3 question, but like when you started saying like, hey, like getting into marketing, getting into all the aspects you may lack in, either is there things that, because I know you and Jim coincide, which is great for having the partner, because then, hey, if I can't do it, they might be able to do it, versus hiring a consultant, versus either doing it yourself or what's the drawing line of bringing a person on staff? I know overhead is a big key to that. You want to make sure you have the overhead for it, but also like what crosses that line, like, hey, I need to hire a marketing director. I need to hire another administrator. I need to hire, another staff member to either alleviate, to delegate these duties out, or to go about the next step so I can keep growing the business.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of being a small business owner, right? Everything, it's individualized. It's based on, can I afford it? What's my return on this investment? Can I afford to bring on a marketing director in year two when he or she might earn X number of dollars? Can I afford that? But what's the return on the investment? And it's everyone's different. I think we opened up the start of the show with what maybe I could have done differently, and I would have brought a marketing person on sooner. And I didn't back then. We didn't, because we didn't think we could afford it. And we didn't think we had the space. Like, oh, if we get that many new patients, are we going to be able to see them in this small little office? So we didn't do that. And then as soon as we got into a bigger office and we brought on that marketing director, it filled up pretty quickly. So I think, I know it's not the best answer, but it's really looking at each individual question or new hire and saying, can I afford it? What's the return on the investment? Does this make good business financial sense? And then always like, what's the downside? Like, I would never want to have to hire somebody and then have to let them go.
Yeah.
Are you okay with that if that happens? If you bring somebody on in 6 months, things are struggling, are you able to let that person go? Like, I would hate that.
Yeah, because I think that's always the fear of like, hey, I want to bring somebody on that's going to help build the business, and you don't want to see them not succeed. Especially being a business owner, you look at it like, hey, I want this person to succeed all the way. It's almost like gambling, I feel, in that instance. Like, unless because there's no guarantee ROI anything. It's always you got to see your market and see what's going on.
Blind faith.
Blind
That's
faith.
what it is.
You're right. It's a gamble. It's a gamble that you're willing. It's a calculated gamble that you think that you understand the market, and by bringing in that new person is going to help. But yeah, it's a gamble.
I think a cool thing about this podcast is I feel like we talk to a lot of people who are either starting to leave their 9 to 5, people who want to, and people who are kind of in the middle or have their own business and are kind of growing still. You talk about like you went and you did the networking, you went and you talked to the doctors, you went and reached out to people. What was that like? What exactly did you do to grow that business that first 6 months, that first year, until you really had like a dedicated someone dedicated to really do marketing? Because I think that's something that's not talked about a lot, like networking, like chamber of commerce, like all these things that can really help your business grow. That people just don't take advantage of. So what was it like that first year with everything, just meeting people and talking and emailing and all that stuff?
Yeah, I think it's important to know your strengths and weaknesses. And one of my weaknesses was actually marketing and meeting people. I was nervous walking into a doctor's office trying to set up a meeting. I wasn't very good at that. So both Jim and I, we first opened up, we flooded the market trying to meet every doctor we could. And then we got busy and we stopped marketing for a long period of time. And we really used our patients as our marketing
Good old
tool.
word of mouth.
Yeah, and just, hey, you're going back to see Dr. So-and-so. Just, if you wouldn't mind, let them know about your experience here. And we kind of use them as an avenue to get in the door with the doctors. But yeah, it's knowing your strengths and weaknesses. And then, like I said, we acknowledge that both Jim and I weren't comfortable with the marketing part. Now, 20 years later, I'm super comfortable. I actually enjoy doing it. I enjoy meeting new doctors and creating relationships and learning their protocols, how they like us to treat their patients. And it's something I got good at. But I think knowing your strengths, your weaknesses, and trying to fill in the gaps. And that's really part of the reason why we ended up bringing in a marketing director, is because we're not marketing directors for sure.
It's a big thing that I don't think is talked about enough in the business world, is that you have to put the groundwork in. Like when you have employees, when you have a marketing person, those are your foot soldiers, right? And obviously, the more you build up your clientele, the more they're going to be like, this guy's great, you should go to this practice. But like, I don't think it's talked about enough, the amount of work that goes in behind the scenes of meeting people, talking, emailing, just like you said, walking into businesses and being like, hey, this is what I do, this is who I am, we're here to help,
Yeah, and you mentioned the Chamber of Commerce. That's a great option to get your name out there. We did a ton of community events. We still do. Injury prevention workshops, stretch tents at 5Ks. We do injury prevention talks to a lot of the local high schools and strength and conditioning programs for a lot of the teams. Just getting all stuff for free, just to get our name out there and market. That's kind of what we did in the early stages. Now that we have a more formal marketing program with the marketing director, there's newsletters and blogs and the website and social media and all this other stuff that she does a great job. Danielle does a great job, handling. Beginning, we didn't have that. It was just more, we kind of stayed in our lane. What we're good at is physical therapy, and how can we market the physical therapy part of things, and going out and doing a talk to a 55 and older community about, fall prevention is easy. Walking in and talking to doctors and saying, hey, send us work. I wasn't very good at that. I didn't like it.
Have you had like the reverse? Have you had like other people come into you asking you for referrals and stuff like that? Like, has it flipped a little bit?
It's amazing. It's funny you brought that up because, yeah, I mean, 20 years ago, 99% of the referrals came from physicians sending to us. Now we have what's called direct access. We get a lot of patients that come to us directly, then we have to refer out to an orthopedist. So, we have clinical training once a month. It's the second Friday of every month. We block off the schedule from 12 to 2, and we'll have orthopedists, neurologists, primary care physician, podiatrists come in and kind of speak to us, about an area of their specialty. Maybe it's a new surgical technique. But really what they're doing is they're marketing to us so that we can refer to them. So it's interesting how things kind of flipped.
That is, when did that flip happen? Because it's funny you mentioned that, because I feel like my whole life you needed a referral to go somewhere, but now like the last like couple years it's kind of been like you don't really need to go. Yeah, you need to
My
go.
insurance does. That's a whole other thing, though.
I don't. Again, I know nothing about this world, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, and sometimes terms are used interchangeably. So there's a prescription, which is a doctor's prescription saying you need physical therapy, and then there's a referral. Certain insurance companies require that a doctor make a online referral through the portal, allowing that patient to then go and get physical therapy. So if that's the case, you need a prescription for physical therapy and you need a referral, that insurance-based referral. Sometimes they get used interchangeably, but yeah, I think two things happened. The direct access, when physical therapists were allowed to start treating patients directly, and there's limitations. It's, for 10 visits or 30 days, you're allowed to treat a patient without a prescription, and then they have to eventually get a prescription. Um, that was the first thing that kind of changed, flipped the script a little bit. And then the second thing, just, we became a pretty big practice in the Patchogue area, that we were seeing a lot of patients that we got noticed, and then doctors would start reaching out to us. Hey, maybe you could send me some of your patients. And yeah, I think those two
That's a
things,
great
direct
feeling.
access and just importantly growing. I mean, there was one practice, I won't mention the name, but I in those early years I kept going to them, saying, and I knew some of the doctors are, I won't get into too many specifics, but I knew some of the doctors that, hey, I would really love to refer to you, but I can't. I'm in this hospital network and I can't. I have to send the referrals, to the hospital. And now, they're no longer with the hospital. And now a lot of these guys and girls kind of market to us and say, hey, can
Yeah.
you send us some work? And in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, it's funny how
the turns have
the switched
tabled.
a little bit, but yeah,
You
but
got the tables in turn.
I don't hold that against them. Yeah,
I said it backwards on purpose.
he's one step ahead of us,
All
DJ.
right. Well, to get off insurance talk and all that, let's talk about,
We're not medical people at all,
yeah,
so
yeah. As you can tell, I don't like.
that's a whole different
Yeah,
world.
we definitely need to find an insurance person to bring on here to clarify some things. But so like, let's talk about you guys, your growth, and what's next for you guys. Do you mind sharing, or can you share, like, even if it's just a percentage of
Sure.
how much you guys have gone from profits from last year? Or do you have like a projection yet, or do you know what it's going to look like from last year to this year?
So we just opened our
Mm-hmm.
third office in Islip, and it's something I'm really, really proud of. We found this space in Islip. It was Thanksgiving Eve of 2019, right before COVID. No one knew what COVID was at the time, obviously, and it took our landlord until about March to get us the lease. And that was actually right in the heart in the beginning of that COVID time period. So we pumped the brakes, tabled everything. We weren't sure if we were still going to be, in business or not. Finally, we got back up and running, and it was a huge build out. It took us a while to get into that space and open it up, but we opened up in May of this year. So it's an 11,000 square foot facility. DJ's been there. It has 50 yards of
It's
indoor
huge.
turf.
It's awesome.
It's a physical
I'm pretty
therapy
sure I went
office,
there
an
too.
occupational.
I think I went there with you once.
I brought him over once when I had to service something. I think he came over with me.
That's a beautiful facility.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, thank you. So it's got the PT practice, the OT practice in the front, and then the back is the athletic performance. So that was a big investment for us, and it's really we're happy with where it's at. We're pretty busy for the first 6 months. So I think for the next year or so, we're going to let the dust settle from that, try to recoup some of the investment that we made. But then we're going to look to open up another practice. And we have a couple locations targeted, probably up on the North Shore. But like I said before, we have to continue to grow. We have to continue to become more efficient. And that's really what our mindset is, in the next several months. Like I said earlier, the profit margin in PT is very narrow. It's single digit. So you have to be really prudent with your decisions, and you don't want to over leverage yourself and overextend. And, I have 90 employees right now, and I would never want to have to let somebody go because of a bad decision we made. So what Jim and I decided is we're going to get a little more growth in the 3 offices. And then when we feel we're financially ready, we'll open up that next office.
So when you say razor thin margins, right? Like, so do you look at a great year as something like you open a new office and maybe the profits stay exactly the same? Or what is like the definition of growth for you in a year? Like if you're saying, these margins are so thin that it's a single percentage, like what is that definition of growth every year that you guys strive for?
Yeah, so 15, it's a good question. I'm a numbers guy, and I like looking at things on a number basic basis, very objectively. We average about 15% growth each year. In Now that's not necessarily financial; that's productivity from referrals and a number of visits done, which sounds great. Most companies would be happy with 15%. But our average reimbursement rate drops by 4% each year, and then our expenses increase by about 7% each year. So really, that 15% growth, we're just talking kind of just productivity. Subtract the 4% and the 7%, is really you're down to 4% of growth. So we have to continue to grow by 15% or become more efficient in our processes. And there's 2 sides of it. Like what I look as successful, is really from an outcome standpoint. Are our patients getting better? Are we recognized as, the best physical therapist around? That's really first and foremost. From the business sense, it's, where are we from a profit margin standpoint? Knowing that we want to give raises every single year to our employees, and what do we have to do to continue to do that? And that's where that's sometimes what keeps me up at night is, hey, we have to continue to grow. If we don't grow, what happens?
Did it become, when was that moment that it became, holy shoot, it's not just my salary, it's not just my partner's salary, it's these people and they're living and they have families. Like, when did that switch flip for you? Was it right away? Because I know you were talking, all the stuff that you were saying before was about 54, 54, 54, 54. When did it become, this is way bigger than just myself and my family? This is, now you got over 90 people, 90 families that depend on you and your business.
Yeah, I think it was always there. But to answer your question, when COVID hit, and Jim and I took the stance in the very beginning that we're not laying anybody off. I said, we'll do this together. We'll ride this out. And then we did that for a few weeks, and then and our accountant was saying, no, you have to do this. You have to start letting people go, and know that you're going to rehire them in the future. But I said, no, we're not going to do this. We all across the board started taking a little bit less. We had pay cuts across the board. Everyone agreed to that. We said, hey, instead of letting somebody go on our clinical staff, we're all just going to take 10% less, and then 15% less. And then we got to the point where we're like, hey, we were doing at the time, 1,500 visits a week, and we're down to 200 visits a week, and it's just not sustainable. And that's where I really was like, wow, this person that just bought this house or just got married or has a newborn, how are they going to be able to survive that we let them go? Now, the government stepped in and helped out with a lot of those programs that they had for those employees. Um, but yeah, I think COVID is when it really hit home. Like, wow, if I let somebody go, you know, they're not going to be able to pay their mortgage on the house that they just built. So that really is what keeps me going to make sure that we're profitable and successful. Is that I would never want to have to let somebody go because of the fact that we're not, in a profitable
Well,
state.
I mean, there were not a lot of businesses that were doing that during COVID. Um, is that something?
It was very
Yeah,
difficult.
yeah.
Yeah.
Was that something that you just prided yourself in? That hey, like we were able to do this for people. And when did you guys actually come back from COVID and start kind of seeing patients on a somewhat regular basis?
So and that was another thing. We weren't really given good instructions. Were we? What was the term that they were using? Essential.
Yeah,
Remember the whole
essential.
we're
Yeah,
an essential
You had to be an
employees. We're an
essential
essential business.
employee and I know people
Yeah,
had to have a piece of paper saying like, I'm an essential employee. I work for XYZ.
yeah, and that's ironic. You walk into the dry cleaner and it's essential. They're an essential business because you need clothes, but yet somebody else isn't essential. It was kind of ridiculous, but um, yeah, it was a very very difficult time. You learned a lot. We never really shut down. We stayed open that whole time. We did have to end up laying people off as time went on, but we brought everybody back. I think it was by the end of July, so we started laying people off. I think it was like May. By July, we started bringing everybody back.
Okay, short term, that's
Um,
good. I mean, that's
it was short term, yeah, but it took us a full year to get back from a productivity standpoint to the number of visits that we were doing. And remember, there was the different variants that came out. There was Delta and all the other ones. So just as we got close to getting back, then another variant would hit. But it was a solid year. And actually, my Riverhead office never really progressed. We had a nice trajectory going up right until COVID, and it's been pretty much flatlined since. Um, Now that could also just be that we reached our max in our market share in that office, but um, it's COVID affected elderly people disproportionately, and we see a good number of elderly people in this office.
dang. That's all about maintaining and just getting through it. I mean, that was a scary time for everybody, and yeah, I mean, I can imagine just seeing all the offices like going up, cutting back, going up, cutting back. Like now, I know since the last year or so, everybody's been ramping up and everything's been opening back up, and it's been a lot better. Have you guys recovered
Yeah.
a lot since then, like percentage wise, in comparison?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Now we're back with the Patchogue office, and yeah, we're back, and we're having um, reaching record highs again with productivity. But just to go back, it was interesting. We talked about having a partner. My partner Jim is very good on the HR side and on the scheduling side. Like that was his thing. He was able to manipulate the schedules and bringing people back. Like, hey, I think we're going to bring so and so back next week, and then we're going to bring the next person back the week after that. And that was one of the advantages. That's one of his strong suits that he was very good at during that time. That I'm not good at.
Scheduling's an art. I found that out.
Especially like in our industry, there's norms. So there's a 13% no show cancellation rate. So 87% arrival rate is what's normal. During COVID, it was like a 50%. So you're trying to have a schedule that a therapist can see patients, knowing that 50% of them are going to cancel. So then it's like the art of, right, well, do you overbook them a little bit, knowing that you have these people that are canceling? And that's something Jim did very, very well at.
He kind of had a feeling of who was going to show and who wasn't, kind of thing.
Yeah,
What?
yeah.
That's nuts.
So, how we generally like to wrap up, we have like a few couple questions that we like to ask people. What is your biggest piece of advice to anyone who's either in business, is looking to get out of their 9 to 5 and potentially start a business, or someone who, I mean, is in the thick of it, just like you, and 10, 15 years in, and maybe they're in a spot where it's like, man, this is a little rough patch right now, but we can get there. Like, what advice do you have for someone?
I think it's important. We all of us get so busy in our day to day life that how fast did the summer go by? How fast is it now? Thanksgiving. Now it's going to be 2024. Time just flies by, and and I can speak for myself, like I think it's important that we take a step back and say, what's my ideal scene? What is really going to make me happy in life? What am I passionate about? What are my goals? Is it monetary? Is it, time spent with your family? Like, what are your truly, and be honest with yourself, what are your goals? And then think, is the setting that I'm in right now, is that going to help
Yeah.
facilitate those goals or not? And if that's not the case, then I think you really have to take a step back and take time. How much we're from Long Island, we're all super busy, but to take 15, 20 minutes and say, hey, you know what? Am I happy? Am I not happy? What can I do to make myself improve the current state? I think that's the first thing. And whether you're working for somebody else or if you're in business and you're just in the thick of it, having that time where you can just close the door, have some quiet, and really just think, what is it that I want to achieve, and how
Yeah.
best can I get there? I think is the most important thing. I think we all just get stuck in the rut of work, 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 and time goes by, and then all of a sudden another year went by and another year went by. So I think that would be my best advice: is just really take some time and think about, what are you passionate about, what would make you happy, what's your ideal scene, and then take it from there.
That's great. As so, one of the last things to talk about really is, I mean, I'm just again, this is the stuff that was sent over. Like, you do so much. Like, let's say you're currently is a clinical instructor and center coordinator for clinical education for Sacred Heart University, Stony Brook University, local physical therapy programs. You've been a member, like you said, of the American Physical Therapy Association for a while. Like, it looks like you do a lot. You said you go back to Sacred Heart, you do all these speeches. You also run a business. What? First off, how do you deal with time management? And lastly, what do you do to cope, or what's like your self care for yourself outside of everything that's business?
I mean, he also has a family and kids too, so so there's even
Just,
that
just,
Yeah.
adds to it.
I think you can't do it all yourself. It's impossible. You need to have a good team around you, and that team is both on the
yeah,
business side and at home. My wife, really is the one that should get all the credit, because she's the one that handles the kids and the meals, and I just check my Google Calendar and see where I'm supposed to be, and I show up. Um, but in the office, I think you need a really good team around you, people that you can trust, that you can delegate stuff to. Nothing's worse than delegating something to somebody and then wondering, is it getting done? Is it getting done the
yeah.
way it should be getting done? And I feel we have a really, really good team, around us. Um, and then just like I said, like really, having that time to yourself to really go over, okay, what do I have to do today, this week, this month? Make sure, I'm prioritizing those certain things, as opposed to kind of just running with the chicken without a head. And staying organized.
And what
Is the
about
key.
self care? What do you do for self care? Is there like, I know you're a big sports guy. I don't know if you still play. Like, for me, it's pickleball, basketball. I love music. Like, there's all these different outlets that I have, and honestly, for me, is my content, and literally part of my business is a self care for me. So what are some of the things that
Mhm.
you do to take care of yourself, or to have as a coping mechanism?
Yeah, I think it's mental, physical, spiritual. I think for me, again, like talking about taking a step back and say, what's my ideal scene? I love being with my family. I love being with my kids. We're boaters. I love being able to go over to Fire Island with my family every weekend and just spend some time there on the boat with my kids. That gives me great joy. Physically, I work out one time a
Really?
week. That's it. Friday mornings is when I get my one workout in, and that's what I do. From a workout standpoint, I like to play golf. And golf is funny because when I first started playing golf, it probably was a negative, not a positive, because I would get so frustrated. But now I realize, you know what? I'm not going to be a professional golfer. Let me just have some fun, and it's actually a nice outlet for me for 4 or 5 hours. I try to do that often, and my church. I love the church that I go to. I get a lot out of that on the spiritual side. Really seeing the big picture. So I think to answer your question, it's my family, exercise, spending time with friends, playing golf, and then the church. So I think it's that mental, physical, spiritual self healing.
Well-rounded individual.
And then honestly, the last thing I have for you is, like, for the people who don't know exactly about professional care, physical therapy, and pro care, occupational therapy, and then you also said you have the athletic side of things. What are, like, if you could just kind of name all the services you provide and who exactly is like the people you serve, and then how they can find out about you, your social media and contact.
Sure, yeah. So it's professional care, physical therapy, and rehabilitation. That's the physical therapy practice. We treat anything from general orthopedic conditions, balance, sports medicine. So, a lot of times young athletes tear their ACL on their knee, they end up having surgery. That's kind of our specialty. But, fractures, senior citizens that come in just for general strengthening. Then on the occupational therapy side, we have certified hand therapists over there. So any hand-related diagnosis, carpal tunnel, any post-operative type case, we see on that side. And then athletic performance, pro care athletic performance. We have athletes that are coming in that are not injured, that are looking to improve their athletic performance. And it's something that's really big down south that's not that big up here yet. And, it's kind of an emerging market. It works symbiotically with our PT practice because a lot of our athletes that are injured, that are getting better, transition right over to our athletic performance. We call it PCAP, PCAP, Pro Care Athletic Performance. They transfer right into our PCAP program. But it's sport specific, season specific, it's even position specific exercises that help improve strength, speed, power, and it's very data and evidence based driven. So it's pretty cool. That's something I'm real proud of. Yeah, and then you can find us on our website, it's professionalcarept.com or procareathleticperformance.com, or on Instagram, social media, and all those other social media outlets.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool, man. We could get into a whole topic about. We gotta bring you back on. You do too much, man. You need to stop for a second. You do way
Go into
too
a little
much.
more. Yeah.
And it's a crazy thing though to talk about the performance side of things, and I feel like even in professional sports, it's really just a thing that's happened in the past 5 years. People were just so focused on let's play ball, let's get these guys to play. It never was about, oh my gosh, like what about the next 10 years? What's the next person who's going to be the quarterback, the shortstop, the pitcher? Even like WWE. I love WWE just as much as I love regular sports. And they even started doing it. Now they're in colleges, and now they're working on, not just here but all around the world, bringing that next generation um, of athletes. And I think that's a beautiful thing about the performance side of things.
Yeah, the strength and conditioning field in the last 5 years has changed so much. The old days of working out and let's say you're doing a bench press and going to failure, that's out the window. That's been proven that doesn't translate
100%.
to
Yeah.
improve performance on the field. And now there's, force velocity based programs. There's so much out there that helps, like I said, translate to
Yeah.
improved athletic performance. That's pretty
It
cool.
used to
It's
literally
exciting
be
to be a part
work
of.
out until you can't, and then you can recover, after your game. No, it's literally like rest is so important. Your body needs to recover. Like you need to recover to be able to perform
Mhm.
again. But it's crazy how it's only been the past like 5-ish years. And before that, it was kind of like archaic, where it was just keep going, pound, grind, just keep working.
Oh, I remember playing baseball in college, and the thought that like baseball players shouldn't work out. It's gonna it's gonna affect your game. You're gonna get too tight. And that was like an old school thought process. But now you don't see that anymore. Every single baseball player has an off-season workout program, an in-season workout program.
It's not about
That's
the
designed for
workout
them.
you're doing. It's about how you're doing it, how you're incorporating your whole body to get really into it. Man,
Yeah,
you're an
sure.
awesome dude, man. Listen. I appreciate you coming on, and if there's ever anything we could do for you, let us know. We'd love to have you back on, and next couple months, next year, kind of see where your growth has been, and you guys are just going to keep killing it. And I look forward to you guys having 10 offices and being all over the tri-state area and everywhere. I'm excited.
I think that's a great goal. 10 offices. That's a long dream.
Sorry, I just put a lot of pressure on your plate.
One step at a time. But no, I had a great time. Thanks for having me. It was a blast, and I'd love to come back and talk again. And
We got to get your
hopefully I
partner
can
on here too, man. I think that'd be cool. See both sides.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, listen, make
It's
sure
gonna
you
be
go
awesome.
follow them. Professional care, physical therapy, pro care, occupational therapy, and PCAP. So basically, anyone who needs services can get them. I mean, from children to senior citizens. Make sure you go check them out. Great people over there, and they're just going to continue to grow. And like I said, we wish you the best of luck with everything. And seriously, we're here if you need any help.
Great, guys. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Again, we just want to thank Dr. George Ciresi for his time and everything that you guys and your businesses are doing. But until next time, subscribe if you haven't. Follow us on all social media platforms. But most importantly, lift love, crush hate. Just like that, we out.